Was Conor Benn disloyal, or is this just simply business? Now, Conor Benn has left Eddie Hearn, and according to Eddie Hearn, he stated that he asked Conor Benn for a conversation, and Conor Benn declined. Again, was Conor Benn disloyal, or is this just business? Because does that show a lack of loyalty? Should Conor Benn have taken that call? Or, if you've made your mind up, does it really matter? Eddie Hearn, in his interview, his body language, he seemed hurt. I guess from his perspective, he invested in Conor Benn. And he invested in Conor Benn when people did not believe in him. And I'm talking about the failed test. And that failed test, that was a deeply saddening time for Conor Benn. He went through some severe mental health trauma, I believe, according to his perspective. So if people invest in you and back you when you're going through your difficult times, should A, you go to the enemy, and B, if you do part ways, should you at least give them an explanation? Here's a question. Think of this. Would you be hurt? Would you be hurt if you believed in a boxer, invested in a boxer, got him a huge payday, then they have a huge situation that puts them in a very bad position and compromises their mental health at times, and you stand firmly beside them, and then after you get them the big paydays, you build the machine, they simply leave. How would you feel about that? And of course, when things happen, when you make decisions like leaving a promoter, particularly a promoter that backed you, that made you a millionaire, or contributed to making you a millionaire, or making millions, there's a domino effect. There are consequences. I looked in the YouTube comments of the Eddie Hearn interview, and people are questioning Conor Benn, not as just a boxer, but as a person. They're questioning his character. Is that fair? Whether it's fair or not, that's what's happening. Eddie Hearn, often criticized a lot by the boxing community, is now seen as the good guy in this situation. But let's give some context. Conor Benn has gone to Zuffa Boxing. Has Conor Benn been used as a pawn? As in the recent days and the recent weeks, there has been contention. There has been contention between Eddie Hearn and Dana White. Think of this. Was it just about the money? Should the money overtake loyalty? From my perspective, the currency of loyalty is extremely important, but that's just my perspective. Not everyone thinks the same. But think of this, changing promoters may not be the issue, but denying the phone call may be the issue. In this sense, the outcome is not the problem. The process to the outcome is the problem. And perhaps both are problems. Perhaps the process and the outcome are problematic. And then there's the obvious question. The obvious question is, why did Conor Benn move to Zuffa Boxing? And why did he decide to go into that galaxy? Why did he decide to pair with Eddie Hearn, considering the context? This is probably a strategic move. Most people say it's just about money. And yes, money is obviously part of the equation, but it's a strategic move, I believe, to get American exposure. Let's look at Conor Benn. Let's look at Conor Benn objectively. Conor Benn he is an integral part of the boxing algorithm. He is a part of the British boxing algorithm. But under Zuffa Boxing, he may believe, or his team believe, he can be part of the American boxing algorithm. And that context is important. I would argue he's already part of it, but perhaps they believe that under Zuffa Boxing, under their platform, under their machine, that growth could be exponential. Remember, when we're making decisions, when a boxer of that level, of that economic level, with that type of machine makes a decision, they will be talking to different people that will be influencing that decision. But here may be a problem. Under Matchroom, So under the Eddie Hearn machine, Conor Benn was big. But of course, he was still behind AJ. Of course, AJ is the big, massive superstar. But Conor Benn was big. I guess the assumption here is under Zuffa, Conor Benn can be the main star. He can be the only shining light or the shining light under that umbrella. But here may be the problem. From my understanding, from my comprehension, Zuffa is about the platform and the entertainment rather than the actual specific boxes. So then you think to yourself, what is that Zuffa spotlight? Because the spotlight isn't the boxer itself, it's the matches and the entertainment. Now that premise may be incorrect, but that was my understanding. So I'm assuming that the money that was offered was massive. And remember, when we talk about money, it's not just the actual purse, it's the pay-per-view splits. You know, you can break it down into like 4 separate elements. But then we go back, we take a step back, and we ask, does the big money justify siding with the enemy? And when we're talking about the enemy, who's the enemy? From an Eddie Hearn perspective, the enemy is Dana White and Zuffa Boxing. But is Zuffa Boxing really the enemy? Is Dana White really the enemy? Or is this just simply business? And I saw a few different perspectives on this. I was watching an interview with Dominic Ingle, so had his perspective. Obviously, Dominic Ingle is a trainer with very high credibility. And he said that this news was intentionally released on the Friday. And I think his justification for that was that it gives people time to digest the news until next week. So he says that the timing of breaking the news was intentional. And he also stated that Eddie Hearn and, you know, when Eddie Hearn was battling Dana White verbally, Eddie Hearn won the war of words, but Dana White, through Zuffa Boxing, delivered the knockout by capturing one of his major boxers. So that was the knockout punch, taking one of his biggest stars. But my question, when I'm going through this, I'm thinking to myself, can Zuffa really provide a bigger opportunity? Which obviously leads to the question, what is the biggest opportunity? And again, we go back to the morality. Is this a snake move? Is this really disloyal? Or again, is it just making a smart business decision? Or is it a smart business decision? Personally, I believe in loyalty. When I've done business, I've always tried to have a certain degree of loyalty and integrity. But in my experiences, most people do not have integrity and don't necessarily have loyalty. Again, everyone is different. Everyone's priorities are different. And remember, we don't know what happened behind the scenes. We're not there as part of the negotiation. We're not, seeing the ideas, and we're not seeing how that relationship between Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn was nurtured and developed. Maybe there's been some issues there. We don't know. And obviously we're seeing Eddie Hearn's perspective, but we're not seeing Conor Benn's perspective. I saw another interview with Eubank Jr.'s manager, and he stated that he thought Conor Benn would be loyal. But again, he states money talks. He also stated that he believed, the key word here is believe, not know, but believe, that it's a one-fight deal. So that's interesting. It's a one-fight deal. What does that mean? Obviously, from a reflex action, it means it's a one-fight deal. But is there the potential for it to be a longer business relationship? Or is it literally it's one fight and you're done, and then he goes back to a different situation? You know what? When you think of boxing or entertainment or anything in life, the question becomes, how important is the relationship? How important is the relationship? And if Conor Benn in the future severs his relationship with Zuffa Boxing, is the relationship with Eddie Hearn so much in tatters that Eddie Hearn, would he take him back or would he not take him back? And is that relationship with Eddie Hearn, is it important? And by refusing the phone call, has he now permanently damaged that relationship? And was that a good business decision? Let's put loyalty aside for a minute. Let's put the morality to the side. Was that a good business decision? Again, let's imagine a world where he gives Eddie Hearn the call. And in that call, he shows respect, gratitude, thanks him for everything that he's done, thanks him for being by his side, by having his back when he was in a vulnerable place, and then provide an explanation for his decisions. Would that have changed the context? Would that have changed the public perception? Or even if it didn't change the public perception, would it have changed the objective morality? And is Conor Benn tarnishing his relationship with the British public? And does that matter? Does that matter to him? You know, what's more important, the relationship with the British public, the relationship with Eddie Hearn, or is the whole prospect of getting the best financial deal for his family, is that the be-all and end-all? You would think maybe you could manage all three. You know, you want to have a good relationship with the British public, you want to have a good relationship with your former promoter, because there's always the prospect that you could work again, and you want to get the best financial deal for your family. But this goes back to that question, does loyalty matter? Or is it simply a game? Is boxing simply a game of entertainment? And is it all about winning the game of capitalism? To some people, winning is more important than everything. Winning, I believe, is important. But is it more important than everything? Perhaps if you discard the people that had your back when you were down and out, what happens if you fall again? From this perspective, loyalty is not just part of the game. It's actually an important part of your survival. It's an important part of your evolution to be able to engineer through this game of boxing. I think what's important is that Conor Benn has made a significant move, and only time will tell about the true outcome of the decisions that he makes. Final point, accountability. Now that's a very strong word. I wonder if Conor Benn will take accountability. Will he take accountability? Now, again, we're assuming that this whole narrative bias of the phone call, that was real, that Eddie Hearn asked for the phone call and Conor Benn turned it down. If that premise is true, will Conor Benn take accountability that may not have been the best decision? It may not have been the best decision in terms of character. We're not talking about the business. We're not talking about what's best for your economic development. We're talking about, will he take accountability that might not have been the most beneficial thing to do with regards to your character, your morality, etc.? Will he take that accountability? Because we all make mistakes. The best of us make mistakes. But if we take accountability, it's easier to move forward. And I wonder if he would take that accountability. I know that he's officially acknowledged Eddie Hearn's positive impact, but will he make that phone call? Or will he do it face to face? Will he have that discussion? Or is it too late? Think of this. Think of this. What we do in silence, behind the curtains, often reveals who we truly are. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. That means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. If you want to support the channel, all you've got to do is simply like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content, click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated. Peace.